In March 2012, the body of 30-year-old Lauren Carter was found in the honeymoon suite of a luxury hotel in Miami Beach, Florida. An investigation uncovered the shocking double life of her husband, FBI agent Daniel Carter, and the dark secrets he had been hiding. In October 2011, a private investigator uncovered a trail of deception that would ultimately lead to 3 murders, a web of lies, and a life sentence for a man sworn to uphold the law. The red and blue lights of the patrol cars painted the entrance of the Fontainebleau, Miami Beach with flickering colors, reflecting off the pristine glass windows. The air was thick with humidity, the ocean breeze carrying a strange stillness that did not belong. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the hallways as 2 uniformed officers rushed to the penthouse suite 2704, their radios crackling with updates from dispatch. The 911 call had come in minutes ago, a man's voice, shaken, distressed, almost broken, reporting that his wife had stopped breathing. The hotel corridor smelled of freshly cleaned carpets and expensive perfume, but beneath it lingered something foul. The moment the officers reached the door, something felt wrong. The door was slightly ajar. A thin streak of red ran down from the golden handle, trailing toward the plush white carpet inside. One of the officers pushed the door open. Inside, the air was thick, suffocating, carrying the unmistakable metallic scent of blood. The suite, once the picture of luxury, was now frozen in chaos. A lamp had been knocked over, its shattered pieces scattered across the floor. A half-finished bottle of champagne stood on the nightstand, the 2 glasses beside it untouched. The bedsheets were tangled, ripped from the mattress, drenched in deep, dark red stains that had begun to dry at the edges. A silk robe lay crumpled near the door, soaked in blood. And then they saw her. Lauren Carter, 30 years old, newly married, full of life just hours ago, now a motionless figure on the cold marble floor near the bathroom entrance. Her body was twisted unnaturally, her once glowing skin now bruised and discolored. Her face was swollen beyond recognition, one eye nearly shut from the impact of repeated blows. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth, drying against her lips. The side of her skull was caved in, a deep, violent wound exposing the bone beneath. A thin stream of blood led from her body into the bathroom, where crimson handprints smeared across the tiled walls, desperate, panicked, the marks of someone who had tried to escape but had been dragged back. The officers exchanged looks, their training forcing them to remain professional, but the horror in their eyes betrayed them. This was no accident. On the far side of the room, Daniel Carter, 38, stood in nothing but his boxers, his bare feet planted on the blood-streaked floor. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his hands pressed against his face, fingers shaking. His arms and torso were speckled with blood, some of it dried, some still fresh. His wedding band glistened under the dim light, a cruel contrast to the scene before them. His breathing was uneven. He muttered something under his breath, his voice strained, cracking, but the officers didn't need to hear him to understand what had happened here. One of them stepped forward, eyes locked on the deep, purple bruises forming around Lauren's throat, the imprint of fingers evident. The force had been immense. This was not just a fight. This was a frenzied, relentless attack. The officer's voice was steady, controlled, but filled with something cold when he asked the question that would set the case in motion. "Tell us what happened here." Daniel looked up, eyes wide, tears threatening but not falling, his lips parting as if searching for the right words. But there were no words. There would never be the right words for what had been done. September 2011. The wedding invitations were already sent, the dress had been picked, the venue was booked, and in just a few weeks Lauren Carter would walk down the aisle and become Mrs. Daniel Carter. On the surface, everything was perfect. Their friends admired them, their families approved, and Daniel was everything a woman could want. Successful, charming, a man with a future as bright as his past was clean. But on the night of September the 10th, 2011, as Lauren sat in her dimly lit apartment, the glow of her laptop screen casting harsh shadows on the walls, her entire world shifted. The email was short, just a few lines, but they burned into her mind. Someone had taken the time to find her, to send this, and attached were photos, clear, undeniable. Daniel with another woman, not just any woman, someone familiar. Lauren's hands trembled as she clicked through the images, each one worse than the last. There he was, in a hotel room, his arms wrapped around a woman with dark hair and sharp eyes, the two of them tangled in a way that left no room for misinterpretation. The timestamp on the images told her everything. This wasn't before they had met. This wasn't a mistake from the past. It was recent. Her heart pounded as she scrolled down. A final message was written beneath the photos, a warning. He's not who you think he is. October 2011. The nights were getting colder, but Lauren barely noticed. Sleep had become impossible, the weight of doubt pressing against her chest every time she closed her eyes. Her days had become a blur, smiling at the office, nodding through wedding plans, pretending she wasn't unraveling from the inside. Her phone was always within reach. Every vibration sent a sharp jolt through her body, her heart racing in anticipation. The waiting was the worst part, the uncertainty. She had opened a door, and there was no way to close it now. On October 18th, 2011, the call finally came. The investigator had been thorough. The woman in the photos had a name, Samantha Hayes, 29 years old, a cocktail waitress at one of Washington, D.C.'s high-end bars. She was the type of woman people noticed. Dark hair, sharp features, a presence that made men look twice. And Daniel had noticed her too. The affair had been going on for over a year of secrets, a year of lies woven so tightly that Lauren had never suspected a thing. The investigator described late-night hotel stays, hidden meetings, text messages that were erased before she could ever see them. A second life unfolding behind her back, slipping just beneath her fingertips. But that wasn't the worst part. Samantha had disappeared. The last time anyone had seen her was October the 15th, 2011. She had finished her shift at the bar, clocked out as usual, and walked toward the parking lot. The security cameras caught her heading toward her car. After that, there was nothing. She never showed up to work the next day, never answered her phone, never touched her bank account again. The police report had been filed by her roommate 3 days later, but no leads had come, no forced entry, no signs of a struggle, just a woman who had walked into the night and never came back. Lauren's stomach twisted as the details sank in. The betrayal was one thing, but this was something else, something much worse. Samantha had vanished just days after confronting Daniel. The investigator's voice was careful now, slow, measured. There was more. A pattern emerging. One Lauren wasn't ready for. Because Samantha wasn't the only one. There was another name, another woman, another disappearance, and Lauren's world, already crumbling, was about to collapse. November 2011. Lauren's world had narrowed to a single point. Every waking moment was consumed by the same haunting question. Where was Samantha Hayes? She searched constantly, combing through every article, every police bulletin, every missing person post she could find. The facts remained unchanged. On October the 15th, 2011, Samantha had walked out of her workplace and vanished. No calls, no bank activity, no security footage beyond that final glimpse of her in the parking lot. A week later, on October the 21st, 2011, police entered her apartment. Nothing had been touched. Her makeup was still arranged neatly on the bathroom counter. A cup of coffee had sat half-finished on the kitchen table, long gone cold. Her suitcase was in the closet, her car keys untouched on the hook. It was as if she had simply stepped out for a moment, expected to return, but never did. And Daniel had kept living his life like nothing had happened. The PI had followed him. For weeks, Daniel had gone to work as usual, attended meetings, laughed with his co-workers, kissed Lauren goodnight, and spoke about their wedding like it was the happiest moment of his life. There was no hesitation, no unease, not a single crack in the perfect image he had built. Lauren knew she should have confronted him, asked him where he had been the night Samantha disappeared, but deep down, she already knew the answer. And then came another name. The moment November the 27th, 2011 arrived, she found herself staring at a new report. Another missing woman, another case buried beneath a pile of unanswered questions. Erica Mills, 27,
a former FBI informant.
Lauren's fingers trembled as she read through the details. Erica had been missing since December 4th, 2010. She had been last seen leaving Daniel's office. The reports were brief, but something stood out. Erica had been scared. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, she had gone to the authorities. She had told them she feared for her life. She had wanted protection, but she never gave a name. And then, just like Samantha, she had vanished. Lauren's stomach twisted as she put the pieces together. Samantha and Erica weren't just two missing women. They were two women Daniel had been involved with before her. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a pattern. And now, Lauren was next. December 2011. Daniel wasn't just an unfaithful fiancé, he was dangerous.
Samantha had tried to leave him. She had threatened to expose their affair, to tell Lauren everything. That was October the 15th, 2011. 3 days later, she vanished.
Lauren had no way of knowing, but by then Samantha's body was already buried beneath the wooden floors of an old hunting cabin, an isolated property that Daniel had inherited years ago. He had driven out there in the dead of night, a shallow grave already waiting, the weight of her body against the dirt, the coldness of the air, the silence. Then, just weeks later, December 4th, 2011, Erica Mills made a mistake. She had found something, files, documents, information she wasn't supposed to see. Lauren could only piece together fragments, but one thing was clear. Erica had met with Daniel that night, and she had never been seen again. Her death was cleaner, less personal, a staged overdose, pills, a river. Another body washed away, another problem gone. Daniel knew how to cover his tracks. For the next few months, Lauren tried to ignore what she knew, tried to convince herself that she was wrong, that her mind was twisting things into something worse than they were. But by February 2012, as her wedding day drew closer, the weight of what she had uncovered was suffocating. Daniel Carter wasn't just a liar, he was a killer, and if he knew that she knew, she would be next. The hallway outside Penthouse Suite 2704 was quiet, the thick carpet absorbing the sound of hurried footsteps. The security camera positioned near the ceiling captured a single figure stepping out into the dimly lit corridor. Lauren Carter. Her face was tense, eyes darting as she clutched a cell phone to her ear. She walked fast, barefoot, the silk hem of her nightgown swaying against her legs. One hand was wrapped tightly around her wrist, red marks already forming there, a faint reminder of the fight that had just taken place inside. Somewhere down the hall, an elevator chimed. The sound made her pause, glance back toward the suite she had just left. Her breathing was uneven, her grip on the phone tightening. Whoever was on the other end of the call was listening. She moved further, out of the camera's main view. but the audio picked up something faint. A distressed whisper. A name.
Someone was coming.
The moment lasted only a few minutes before Lauren reappeared, her steps slower now. 2:30 a.m. She hesitated outside the door, her free hand hovering over the handle. Then, as if bracing herself, she took a breath and slipped back inside. March 6th, 2012, 2:31 a.m. The first noise was muffled, something heavy hitting a surface, a sharp intake of breath. The suite walls were thick, but the neighboring guests stirred. A second thud followed. Lauren had tried to reason with him, tried to explain why she had no choice but to go to the police. But Daniel had seen something else in her words, a betrayal, a threat.
The argument turned heated, voices rising, the sound of glass breaking. Lauren's voice cutting through the air, desperate, pleading, before being silenced by something harder, sharper.
March 6th, 2012, 2:45 a.m. The breaking point came fast. Daniel snapped. The first blow sent Lauren staggering backward, her body colliding with the wooden nightstand. A sharp crack filled the room as the corner of the furniture dug into her ribs. She gasped, her body reacting before her mind could. She tried to run, but Daniel was faster. He grabbed her, his grip vice-like as he slammed her against the wall. Her head hit first, once, twice, a sickening sound. The strength behind it wasn't just anger, it was controlled, deliberate, absolute. Blood splattered across the white paint, a red smear as she slid down, her body collapsing onto the floor. The struggle ended there. Her chest rose in sharp, shallow breaths. Her fingers twitched, reaching for something that wasn't there. And then, stillness. March 6th, 2012, 3 a.m. Daniel stood over her, his own breathing uneven now, his hands trembled, the rush of adrenaline still pumping through his veins. She wasn't moving, and not this time. His pulse pounded in his ears, drowning out everything else. The weight of what he had done pressed down on him, suffocating, but his mind remained focused. He needed to think. There was still time.
He moved quickly, stepping over the body to the bathroom. The shower handle squeaked as he turned it on, letting hot water spill over the tile floor. Steam rose, curling around the edges of the glass door.
He went back, crouched beside Lauren. He lifted her, arms stiff as he carried her into the bathroom. The warm water hit her skin, washing away some of the blood, but the bruises were already deep, darkening. The scene had to look different. He grabbed a washcloth, wiped down the surfaces, the nightstand, the wall, the blood. His hands worked fast, but his thoughts were faster. He knew how to handle crime scenes. 4:45 a.m. He was ready now. The call to 911 was rehearsed in his head before he even dialed. His voice cracked, panic layered perfectly beneath the words. His story was set. And the real story, the one that would come out later, was buried under the weight of silence. December 14th, 2014. The courtroom was silent as the jury returned. The weight of their decision pressed against the walls, suffocating in its finality. Daniel Carter sat rigid in his chair, his expression unreadable, but his fingers twitched, just slightly, as if his body was reacting to something his mind refused to accept. The trial had lasted 3 weeks, and in those weeks the carefully constructed image of Agent Daniel Carter, FBI hero, devoted husband, protector of the law, had been ripped apart. Piece by piece, the prosecution had dismantled him, revealing the monster beneath. First, Samantha Hayes. Her remains had been dug up from beneath the hunting cabin, discovered by a private investigator hired by Lauren's family. The soil had preserved parts of her, the damage to her throat still evident, the bruising on her fragile bones telling a story of violence. Then, Erica Mills. The overdose, once written off as an unfortunate accident, was exposed for what it truly was. Traces of sedatives in her system, force-fed, staged to look like she had taken them willingly. But her body told a different truth. The bruises on her wrists, the tiny fractures in her ribs from a struggle. She had fought for her life before she was dumped into the river, her breath stolen by the cold, dark water. Lauren's case had been the tipping point, the brutal beating, the staged crime scene, the lies unraveling one after the other. The jury did not take long. The verdict? Guilty. 3 counts of first-degree murder. A slow exhale rippled through the courtroom. Some gasped, others nodded, as though they had known all along. In the back row, Lauren's parents held on to each other. A mother who had buried her daughter. A father who had spent the past 2 years waking up every morning with the unbearable weight of knowing what had been done to her. Daniel did not move. His lips pressed together, the only sign of tension in an otherwise eerily calm expression. The judge's voice was steady, carrying no emotion. The words were clear, each one sinking into the air like a nail sealing a coffin. You were supposed to uphold the law. Instead, you took 3 lives to protect your own sins. You will never be free again. Then it was over. The sentence was given. Life in prison. No parole. The cuffs closed around Daniel's wrists, and for the first time he had no control.
February 2015.
The cell was small. A narrow bed, a metal sink. A single light flickering above, casting shadows along the cracked walls. The prison air was thick with sweat and regret, a place filled with men who had once thought they were untouchable. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, his hands resting against his knees. His mind, once sharp and calculating, had dulled with time. The trial had drained him, but prison had broken him. Days blurred, conversations were brief. Inmates spoke in hushed tones when he passed. Some still recognized him, the former FBI agent, the man who once carried a badge and a gun, now nothing more than a prisoner.
Then came the envelope.
No return address, no name. Just a single, unmarked white envelope slipped beneath his cell door. His fingers hesitated before picking it up. The paper was thin, slightly creased, as though it had been handled too many times before reaching him.
Inside was a photograph.
His breath stalled. Samantha Hayes. The picture was old, grainy, but unmistakable. Daniel and Samantha together, smiling. A moment frozen in time before her body had been buried beneath dirt and forgotten. On the back, in bold, uneven strokes, 4 words were written. I know the truth. Daniel's grip tightened around the edges of the photo. His pulse throbbed against his temple, his mind racing through possibilities. Who? How? Why now? The envelope crumpled in his hands. His world, already shattered, had just cracked further. The past wasn't buried.
It was watching, waiting.
And it wasn't finished with him yet. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on our daily updates, and you can check out another insane case we have. The case where a rap battle goes horribly wrong. Female rapper murders 2 competitors after she lost. Make sure to check it out and let us know in the comments section.